Happy Rotary Friday. Welcome to the general membership meeting of the 107th year of Phoenix Rotary 100. I'm Andy Mosley, and it is my absolute privilege and honor to serve as your club president. Today, Mr. Steve Goldston, printing financial broker, is on double duty. He's not only our roving Rotary reporter, but he is also handling our inspiration. Steve.
Thank you, Madam President. For our inspiration, we read in Lech Lecha portion of the Torah that Hashem says to Abraham, "As far as Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him. I will make him fruitful and will multiply him exceedingly, and will make of him a great nation." Today, we have one of the big challenges of our time, to bring together the three great Abrahamic religions and make the world a better place for all of us. As Rotarians, we strive to work toward this goal. Specifically, we are currently very active in our Peace Fellowship program, selecting outstanding people from throughout our planet to study conflict resolution and other areas of tension among people, and develop techniques and programs to help alleviate these issues. So as we go through our lives today, let us as Rotarians, practicing our four-way test and dedication to service above self, seek out areas where we can identify religious conflict and pursue the actions needed to correct it. As an inspiration for all to be gathered here in our now familiar electronic format, as Rotarian Zoomers, thanks to the Holy Bountiful One for continued blessing.
We have a patriotic video. Denver, Colorado. Clearly it was pre-COVID. Next, we have Mr. Jason Eby, construction law and partner with Snell and Wilmer with our visitor and guest introductions. Jason.
That sounded just like what we used to do for our live meetings. So for those of you visiting us today, let's pretend that's how we always did it. I'd like to welcome a guest, Judy Edmonds, who's visiting us today, as well as a number of visiting Rotarians. We have Barbara Fetter from the Rotary Club of Tempe downtown. My dog Bueller came out to bark just as I'm doing this.
I think that's
Art
a finable
Harrington
offense.
from the Sun Up Rotary Club of Prescott. Andrea Shields from the Rotary Club of Kingman, Route 66. Nancy Van Pelt from the Rotary Club of Prescott Frontier, and Mike and Mary Zungalowitz from the Rotary Club of Sun City Satellite. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope you have a great time.
I also want to say that we've got Joe Sweeney from Prescott as well. Is it Prescott Frontier? Prescott Frontier.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. And now for her secretary's report, Elizabeth Wistoff, Development Director for the Crozier Community of Phoenix. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Andrea. Also, happy Friday, fellow Rotarians. In recognition of Mother's Day this weekend, I'd like to share with you this tribute by Khalil Gibran. The most beautiful word on the lips of mankind is the word mother, and the most beautiful call is the call of my mother. It is a word full of hope and love, a sweet and kind word coming from the depths of the heart. The mother is everything. She is our consolation in sorrow, our hope in misery, our strength and weakness. She is the source of love, mercy, sympathy, and forgiveness. Everything in nature bespeaks the mother. The sun is the mother of earth and gives it nourishment of the heart. It never leaves the universe at night until it has put the earth to bed, to the song of the sea and the hymn of birds and brooks. And this earth is the mother of trees and flowers. It produces them and nurses them. The trees and flowers become kind mothers of their great fruits and seeds, and the mother, the prototype of all existence, is the eternal spirit, full of beauty and love. So happy Mother's Day to all mothers in our club and all those whom we honor. As ever, I have a few announcements. Volunteers are needed tomorrow from 6 to 8 a.m. at St. Luke's for filling food boxes for families in need. Once again, please bring your mask, gloves, and water, and contact Bob Withers for more information. Since it's 6 to 8, it should be nice and cool. This coming Wednesday, May 12th, you are welcome to join the Downtown Social Club meeting. They're a great group, so please get involved and contact Susan Leganke for more details. And speaking of the DSC, mark your calendars to participate in the inaugural Cornhole Tournament fundraiser on Saturday, June 5th, outside at the Revelry at Mesa. The event goes from 11 to 3:30. Fun prizes will be awarded. Registration fee is $50 for 2 people, so you can do some good and have a really good time. Last but not least, Rotary is accepting applications for peace building fellowships, as Steve mentioned. Deadline is May 31st, and if you or someone you know is interested in being a part of this international effort for cooperation, please contact Tony Serrato for more details. Back to you, Andrea.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And now for my report. And I'm going to borrow a line from a friend of mine who recently, well, this is what she said. I feel like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon with our world starting to open up after the pandemic. And I too, and I think many of you feel like a butterfly coming out, emerging from your cocoon. At our last meeting, we were able to meet in person for our general membership at Publico Italian Eatery. It was, this sounds weird, but it was almost normal. It was lovely. Food was great. Fellowship was terrific. It was just great seeing everyone. And then we met at Alistair Adele's front yard for the old-fashioned breakfast, but with a twist. it was so nice seeing everyone, one another, helping, eating some yummy breakfast burritos. We collected water for the Salvation Army. It turned out to be a terrific day. I want to thank Chrissy Schemer, who did a great job with the breakfast burritos. Like I said, it was the old-fashioned breakfast with a twist. I'd also like to thank Ted Taylor. Ted made some homemade lemonade that was delicious. I think I drank about 4 glasses. And I'd like to thank April and Ron Miller, Elizabeth and Red Wistoff, Dan Capote, Monty and Annette Lang, and Alistair Adele and her family for creating a wonderful morning, turning lemons truly into lemonade. And yesterday was the outstanding young man, young woman, it was the virtual award ceremony, or the virtual program. This is our 35th program, so they were celebrating the 35th anniversary. Phoenix Rotary 100 is a continual sponsor and supporter of this program. There were 18 winners overall, and I mean, they've accomplished so much through academics, extracurricular activities, sports, you name it. They're just very involved young folks. Anthony Ruan from Mountain Ridge High School and Naya, and I apologize, Bella Murrigan, were both the top winners. And ironically, both from Mountain Ridge High School. Please go to the YouTube channel and check it out. I think you will thoroughly enjoy watching the students participate. Past President Phyllis Sensman and Sigma are collaborating with the Arizona Department of Health Services and have opened an indoor COVID-19 vaccination pod at Westworld of Scottsdale. We're looking for volunteers to fill one shift. That'll be 50 members or 50 volunteers. But I've also reached out to the district to see if there are any other clubs that might want to help out and participate during that shift. If we can gather 150 members, we will fulfill 2 shifts, help Cigna, and help our community get the vaccine out. Quick update, please don't forget to update your contact information in DACDB. I believe Valerie has sent out notices. Just click on it. It'll take you into DACDB. Check your name spelling if you've moved, a new address or phone number, because you know what? We don't want it to come up as Mr. Potato Head, right? So please check out all that information. And finally, I want to announce our next meeting will be in person, and also we will have a Zoom component. But we're going to meet at the Embassy Suites on Central Avenue in Thomas. The Embassy Suites on 24th Street in Camelback still does not have a kitchen or a catering crew. So the other one on Central and Thomas has been delightful to work with. Please mark your calendar for May 21st at noon. In person. There's plenty of parking, and it's so easy to access. And now for a new member introduction, Susan Leganke, Senior Managing Director at Cushman & Wakefield, to do the introduction. Susan, I hope she's on. Serena is going to introduce herself.
And I am the newest member of the Downtown Social Club. I was asked to do an introduction about myself so you know who I am. So just to kick it off, let me begin. All right, so I'm originally from North Dakota. So if you detect an accent, that is why I joke that I'm a watered down Canadian. I'm just from an hour south of Canada. I'm actually not new to Rotary. I joined Rotary in 2011 in my hometown of Williston, and I had the opportunity to serve as club president in 2013-2014. I see a chat. Oh, thanks, Dan. So I was club president in 2013-2014. I moved down to Arizona in 2015, and I joined the Tempe Rio Salado Club. And from there, I had the opportunity to do a variety of really cool projects, including volunteering in Mexico, which is what this photo is from. I had the opportunity to serve as their club president for Camelback Crossroads from 2016 to 2018. However, my most favorite service project I've ever done is actually not with Rotary. In 2016, I had the opportunity to serve at the Summer Olympics in Rio. I am on the far left. I was one of the leaders for hole number 9 for the men's and women's golf tournament. So that was pretty neat. Knowing more about me, my undergrad, I studied business and communication with a minor in leadership for my bachelor's back in North Dakota. I have an MBA with an emphasis in leadership from Grand Canyon University. And I'm excited to say this Tuesday, I graduated with my doctorate of education in leadership and innovation from Arizona State University. My dissertation was on creating and developing a career development class for life science students. And if you're really interested in watching the defense, I'm happy to send you my video. I've heard lots of really good feedback because when it comes to career development, that's something that's applicable to everybody and anyone. And so if you're wondering, you can call me Serena, you can call me Dr. Christensen. I'm not going to force either title on you. Looking ahead, professionally, I'm an academic advisor with the School of Life Sciences at ASU. I've been there since 2017. Since 2019, I've been the co-advisor for the Rotaract Club. So if you're looking for opportunities to connect with Rotaract, I'm happy to help. And this is a photo from when I used to be in person on campus. Also, I'm a huge fan of the performing arts. I've studied dance since I was 3. In 2012, my sister and I co-founded K. Michael Lee Studio, a dance studio back home in North Dakota, where I still serve as their marketing manager. And I've been doing choreography on YouTube for about 6 years. In 2016, I joined Conservatory of Dance in Phoenix, and I am their lead advanced tap instructor here in the Valley. Personally, I am engaged. My fiance's name is Jonathan Madonia. He is a mechanical engineer and is almost 6 months to the day for our wedding for this November. We have 2 pups. We have a husky. He's 6.5 years old named Benji, and we have a 1-year-old poodle mix named Polly. So that's just a really quick overview of myself. There's my personal email, my cell phone. Feel free to connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn because I love to meet Rotarians from everywhere. And thank you for letting me join the club. I'm honored to be a member. So thank you.
Thank you so much and welcome, Dr. Christensen. We are so happy to have you as a member of our club. Now, let's see, who's next? Mr. Ken Kuipers, Managing Director of Cajun LLC with a Paul Harris Award. Ken.
Thanks very much, Andrea. It's interesting. We have so many Paul Harris fellows in this club. It's truly amazing. We have so many superheroes. And if you look around and ask the person, what does Rotary stand for? Well, frequently people don't know what Rotary stands for. And if they do, they often say it stands for, eradicating polio, helping with vaccination, helping with, drinking water, lifting people out of poverty. So a lot of good things. And so today it gives me great honor to announce a new superhero and congratulate her for becoming her first Paul Harris Award. And then let me introduce Rachel McNamara. Rachel, would you say a few words about what this means to you?
Absolutely. Thank you. I just want to say I've really appreciated all that Rotary does do for the community. And my husband and I really do believe in this organization and have thoroughly enjoyed the people we've met along the way and just really wanted to give to a good cause. And that's what we do.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And Andrea, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. We appreciate the contribution and congratulations on a Paul Harris. All right, now, Mr. Brooks Hilliard, President, Business Automation Associates, with the program introduction. Brooks.
Hello, Andrea. We're running a little early, and I had told Jihad what time to be here, and I don't think he's on yet.
I am here.
Okay, welcome, Jihad. Okay, then let me do the introduction. I first came into contact with Jihad when he was moderating an interfaith panel discussion sponsored by a Jewish group featuring a rabbi, a priest, and an imam discussing the three religions' approach to resilience. When he mentioned while introducing himself that he was raised in Phoenix with the first name Jihad, and that had been a real challenge, I figured immediately we had a story to tell, that he had a story to tell us here at Rotary. So I called him and we got to know each other. Now, Jihad is the founding president and dean of the Bayan Islamic Graduate School, which is affiliated with the Chicago Theological Seminary, although he lives and works in Los Angeles. I'm going to let you read the rest of about him in the formal bio in the Rotarizonian, but let me tell you a couple of things that aren't in the bio. First, he attended Alhambra High as a youth and was homecoming king there in 1988. But even more important, as a young boy, he was on the Wallace and Ladmo show and fondly remembers getting a Ladmo bag, which unfortunately he no longer has. So with no further ado, please join me in welcoming Jihad Turk to Rotary 100.
So I'm happy to share with you sort of my journey, my personal story, and then we can engage in conversation. I'll speak for about 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes, and then we can have a back and forth. I was born in 1971 in Phoenix, and as was indicated, went to Alhambra. I actually went to Arizona State University. I think the person before me who was just inaugurated into the fellowship here at Rotary works there at ASU. But I went to ASU in 1989 for 1 year. And while I was there, I was, being born to an immigrant father from Jerusalem and a Caucasian American mother from Oklahoma. I say my mom's from the Midwest and my dad's from the Mideast. But and so, but growing up, I had a Muslim father, Christian mother. She's Methodist, and as a young person, you don't really think about religion too much. You mostly think about sports and friends and having fun and eating all the goodies out of the Ladmo bag. But when I was in college, I began my spiritual journey, and having a foot in each tradition sort of gave me license, more so than most people, to look into both Islam and Christianity. And so my freshman year at Arizona State, I tried taking courses on religion, and even though I was an engineering major, I was good in math. I'm a kind of a left brain guy, but my heart was taking me in another direction. And so all my elective courses were in philosophy and religion and history, and it piqued my interest. I was really wanting to learn more. And I didn't grow up speaking Arabic or knowing that much about Islam, but I had met somebody who had just studied, he was from South America, from Guyana, South America, and he was there in Tempe, Arizona at that golden domed mosque, and was hired as the new imam there. And he had studied himself at the Islamic University in Medina, Saudi Arabia, where they taught him Arabic, and then he did his Islamic studies. So I had really wanted to learn Arabic so I could approach the understanding of the Quran more directly. And as part of my that continued sort of spiritual walkabout, if you will. And I applied on a whim to get a scholarship to study there in Medina. And my second year of college began at Arizona State University. I had just begun the semester, and I received a letter of acceptance for a full tuition scholarship to study there at the Islamic University Medina. And it arrived 2 weeks, if you remember, this is 1990. 1990, 2 weeks after Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait in the run up to the first Gulf War. And so, it was clear that there was going to be a military conflict in the region. And everyone that I knew, my family included, my parents, they said, you probably shouldn't go over there. There's going to be conflict. But I had this golden ticket to go and study and learn Arabic and to explore those roots, of my tradition, and or explore my roots and heritage. And so I disregarded everyone's sound advice, and I traveled anyway. And I studied there in the desert of Arabia in the city of Medina, which was, it's kind of a city that would not be a target on anyone's map. It's kind of like a religious city. No one is going to target that from Iraqi side or from the coalition side. So I figured, it's a pretty safe place. In fact, when the Gulf War actually happened, I think it was January 15th, like 6 months later, everyone from other parts of Arabia fled to Medina as a safe haven. So anyway, so I studied there. I was there in the desert, and my cousin Chad who was in the U.S. military, stationed in Iraq, stationed rather in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia at the time. And we did and I actually traveled to a friend who was a professor of computer science. He did his undergrad and PhD at Stanford University, and I had met him when he was here in the States. He was a professor of computer science in Jeddah. So he had an American wife, and I had known him. So I went and stayed with him while the university was closed during the bombing phase of Gulf War I. And we had Scud missile warnings. And at that time, we thought they might be chemically laden. And so there was a sort of a safe room that was insulated from gas and all of that. So, bombs were literally falling. Not too much damage happened, but the fear factor was up very high. So you see the bloodshed happening within Iraq, the kind of the shock and awe, if you remember. And I was there on this completely other trajectory. I was there on my spiritual journey, looking for inner peace and discovery of human potential and what's life all about. And then you see this conflict. It was just this juxtaposition that was very jarring. And so when the war finished, I went back to Medina and I continued my studies. I kept asking myself, what do I want to go back and finish up my engineering degree, or do I want to do something different with my life? And I kind of went on literally a walk about in the desert there, continuing that journey and looking up at the stars, a beautiful star-filled night. And I kind of had a revelation of my own, an inspiration, where I decided I know what I want to do. I want to come back and become an academic, a professor, so that I can teach at a university somewhere in the US and be the bridge where I personally have a foot in each tradition. I can somehow bring greater understanding between my American culture and society and the Muslim world broadly writ, which makes up about 1/4 of the world's population. So I came back, and sorry to say to all the Arizona State University fans, I knew I'd have to go to a stronger academic institution. So I transferred to UC Berkeley, where my son is now a sophomore, by the way. And I did my degree in Arabic and history. And before graduating, during my junior year, I took another year off and said, I learned so much more than just the Arabic language for the couple of years I was in Medina, Saudi Arabia. I need to learn another for graduate school. I needed to learn another foreign language, Middle Eastern language. Persian is kind of up there, Persian, Turkish, there's a few options. And so I opted to learn Persian. And so I talked to one of my faculty members at UC Berkeley, who was a Persian expert. He's a British guy named Dr. Algar. And he said, I can write you some letters of introduction. We don't even have an embassy. We still don't for Iran in the US. So he wrote me a letter of introduction to the interest section of I think it was the Pakistani embassy, where they had a small office where Iranian diplomats would issue visas and things like that. So I went there, got a visa, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't even know how to say hello or anything in Persian. And I spent an academic year traveling around Iran, studying both at the University of Tehran as well as in a seminary in Qom. And it was nothing. I mean, I always say Saudi Arabia is exactly like you imagine it from the media. Iran is nothing like you imagine it from the media. It's the exact opposite. It was such a rich culture, very diverse mindsets and mentalities from what you would imagine. And women were large and in charge. They make up a good portion of the parliament. They have sort of a semi-autocrat or democratic government, although it's somewhat also theologically based. So it's not quite a democracy. We do it better here in the US. But nonetheless, women were very participatory in their government and were elected to, I think it was like a third of their parliament. They had a higher percentage of women in their parliament at that time than we did in the US. And it was just such an experience. And then I came back, got married, finished up my senior year at Berkeley, went to UT Austin, where I did my master's degree in Islamic studies with a focus on Islamic jurisprudence or law. And then came out here to Southern California to do my doctoral program in Islamic studies at UCLA. And I was, 6 years into my PhD program. And I was approached by the oldest and largest mosque here in the area, the Islamic Center of Southern California. And for the Muslim community, the oldest one was, it was established in 1950s. So it's not that old, relatively speaking. But, as far as mosques are concerned, it's pretty old. Older than anything you got there going on in Phoenix. So they approached me to serve as the imam or the religious clergy person. And I said, well, my interest is becoming an academic. That's not really what I have in mind and had in mind. They said, well, you can still do your academic stuff, but you can also work with our community and serve as the religious leader. So I said, I'll give it a try. And I found it really rewarding, in part because it's a very large and dynamic mosque. We have over 80 different nationalities of people who come there. I literally and figuratively spoke the language of many, Arabic and Persian, as well as English. I try at least in English. And they were youth focused, and they were also very academic and civically engaged. There was a lot of interfaith work and civic engagement. And so I really enjoyed my time there, and I grew in my experiences. And I also began teaching while I was there at a law school, Southwestern School of Law, and at USC, University of Southern California. And I co-taught a course with a rabbi friend of mine, Rabbi Ruvain Firestone, a course on the Hebrew Bible and the Quran. And we had students apply to get into the class. So they had to be admitted into the course. It wasn't a typical course. It was taught at USC, but it was also through the Center on Muslim Jewish Understanding. And so we actually admitted an equal number of Muslim and Jewish students. There was about 20. And we paired them up and we had them do this text study, the scripture study in a Hebrew style or Jewish style called a Hevruta, which is like a pairing. And it was a beautiful experience. At the end of it, one of the students who got admitted was actually a student at this historic Christian seminary who had applied into this course from as a cross registration. She was at Claremont School of Theology, and she was an African-American woman. Her name was Tahara Akmal, and Tahara's grandfather actually was one of the founders of the Islamic Center of Southern California, which I learned later. But she was graduating with her degree in chaplaincy at this Christian seminary and was the only Muslim there that year. And she had spoken about the course to the president of the university, the Christian seminary, Dr. Jerry Campbell. And he had reached out to me. He said, would you give the invocation this year at this Christian seminary? And, you can recite a Muslim prayer. I said, well, that's very Christian of you to invite me to give the invocation there. And so, I did. And he began talking. He says, look, I'm a former dean at USC, library science, but I'm also an ordained minister in the Methodist Church. And so I was brought on a few years ago to try and make Christian seminary education relevant again and grow the number of students and take this 130-year-old Christian seminary and revitalize it. And so I've been working on some things for the last few years. I think I have something. I need your help. I said, okay, talk to me. What can I do? He said, well, I want to reclaim the role of religion to be a force for peacemaking in the world. I said, well, that's a beautiful idea. How do you plan to go about doing that? He said, well, I want to partner with a Muslim seminary and a Jewish seminary and a Buddhist university so that we can educate the next generation of religious leaders and scholars to be peacemakers by having it in their curriculum to know one another, to respect one another, and to figure out how to collaborate together for the common good. I said, well, that's brilliant. How can I help you? He said, well, I know you're an academic, you're also a religious leader. I need you to identify for me an accredited Islamic seminary or graduate school that we could partner with. I said, well, that's easy. We have about 3 million Muslims, according to Pew, 3.3 million Muslims in the US. We have about 3,000 mosques, and we don't have any seminaries in the United States. The 2/3 of the Muslim American community are immigrants from, Arab and Indo-Pakistani communities primarily, and about 1/3 are African American. Think of Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, that ilk. So about 1/3 are Black and 2/3 are immigrants or the descendants thereof. But we don't have any seminary, but we need one, because we need a pipeline to produce leaders who are relevant to young people, who are inclusive of women and civically engaged. And having studied abroad in seminary, I can tell you that those institutions do not prepare you to be a religious leader that's successful here in the US context. So I said, I happen to be an academic by training and a religious leader by experience. And we have a very large dynamic community here in Southern California. I think I could rally the community together. We could launch a graduate school, seminary. He said, this is a 2-year conversation I'm condensing in just a couple of minutes, but he said, great, if you do that, we'll help you. We will share our campus with you and all of our resources and infrastructure, classroom, all of that, learning information system, student learning system. And we will give you the startup funding for the first couple of years, and we'll incubate you so that you'll be accredited. Your programs will be accredited from the beginning. And when you're ready, you can spin off and when you're independent, when you want to be independently accredited, you can spin off, but we can still be in partnership. I said, well, that's again, very Christian of you. This is a very Christian of all you now of Dr. Jerry Campbell. So this was in 2009, he approached me. 2010 is when we announced, and 2011 is when we began our first incoming class. And I'll never forget the day we announced it. It was June 10th, because I arrived, I live an hour away from Claremont without traffic here in LA. And I arrived on campus. I was walking to the auditorium where we were going to make the big press release conference, and we had dozens of reporters there. It was big news because we had a guy there from Arizona. You might have heard of him, called David Lincoln. He was a trustee at Claremont School of Theology. He says, I'll give $50 million to this idea, and he did. And him and his wife joined the board, and we started an interfaith university. I was a founding trustee of that university, along with David and Jerry and the head of the Jewish seminary and his chair of his board, and one other Muslim leader here in Southern California. And the 6 of us started this interfaith university called Claremont Lincoln University. So he was there, and it was going to be a big news. And as I'm walking to the auditorium, my cell phone rings, and my wife calls, and she says, I just went into labor. And I said, I'm about to give birth to this university. Well, no, I'm just kidding. I said, all right, I'm going to cancel my participation in the press conference. I'm coming home now. She goes, well, hold on. This is my 4th child. I know my body well. We were planning a home birth, by the way. And so she said, it takes me 12 hours from beginning of what do you call it? Those contractions until birth. So do your press conference and then get home quickly. So we did. We gave the press conference. I came home and delivered the baby. She did all the work. I'm just going to be honest. I say I delivered the baby. The woman does all the work. But it was a beautiful day. So we started with that idea in 2010, and we started with a mere 3 students in 2011. And since then, we've grown significantly, and we've had 130 students now enroll in our program. We've graduated to 50, and the rest are enrolled pursuing a chaplaincy degree in Islamic chaplaincy, and also a Master's of Arts in Religion with a concentration in education, leadership, Islamic studies, and philosophy and theology. So Claremont a couple of years ago said, we really like this partnership, and we did double our student numbers now that we partnered with you, but finances as they are, we need to sell our campus and move to Oregon and become the graduate school for a 175-year-old campus there in Oregon, in Salem, called Willamette University, and we want you to move with us. So our board said, okay, we'll consider that option, but look at other possibilities. And we had been approached by a 160-year-old Christian seminary in Chicago called Chicago Theological Seminary. And our board looked at the 2 options and said Chicago is a better fit. So we transferred to Chicago 2 years ago, and I'm still here in Southern California, near Santa Monica. Our offices are in the Orange County, and our program is offered in Chicago. Now, the program that we offer is, and I'll just say a quick word about that and then get back to wrapping up some ideas, and then we can open up for conversation. But our program is designed as an executive master's or hybrid intensive. Now everything is online during COVID, but we've been using Zoom for 8 years. So we're very familiar with Zoom since it came out. And we borrow our faculty as visiting faculty from Yale, Stanford, Berkeley, Duke, Georgetown, et cetera, sort of the elite US institutions. We borrow the person who's a leading expert in every subject that we offer. So we've kind of curated an all-star lineup of faculty, kind of the cream of the crop in the area of expertise that we're offering. And our students come from all over the country. They live and work in different parts of the country, but they converge on now Chicago for 2 weeks in the middle of the semester. And the rest is 1/3 is via Zoom, spread out over the rest of the semester. And those 2 weeks are 10 hours a day for 12 days. So 120 hours of instruction in a 2-week period. It sounds insane, but again, we've been doing it now for since 2014. So it's working very well. And coincidentally, around the same time, USC started a program in the same format and in their global education program. And in December, I started my doctoral program in education at USC. So I'm also a student doing a doctorate in education, so that I can not just make it up as I'm going, but actually know what I'm doing as I'm heading up this graduate school and trying to take it to the next level. That being said, our students are doing incredible things. They are serving as imams and chaplains in the military and prisons and hospitals and universities, Islamic school teachers and principals, and not-for-profit leaders in various sectors. One thing I'll say before concluding is that I mentioned Muhammad Ali earlier as kind of an example of someone who might come to mind when you think of Black American Muslims. He did come through the Nation of Islam, which was sort of anti-white, but in 1975, the founder of that movement died, and his son, Wallace Muhammad, said, my dad helped all of you who were who had a self-esteem problem. And because of the systemic racism that you faced, maybe didn't have self-confidence. He helped you maybe overcompensate that by suggesting that Black people are the kings and queens and that, white people were the devil. He had good intentions, but his ideas were astray. We are going to no longer follow his theology or whatever. We're just going to embrace mainstream Islam, which is against racism of any kind. And so the community, 1 million people followed him in 1975 and transitioned into mainstream Islam. And there in South Phoenix too, there was an imam, Shamsuddin, who I knew really well, who used to be with the Nation of Islam, and he transitioned to mainstream Islam as well. So one of the one of the big names in the Black American community obviously was Muhammad Ali. He's an icon in the country as a whole. I happen to know him, and when in fact was invited to be a witness on his last will and testament. And so when he passed away, and he used to live there with his wife Lonnie. I don't know if any of you have ever met her. She's the sweetest person on the planet. She just moved back to Louisville, Kentucky, where she's originally from, but she was there with Muhammad in Scottsdale. And anyway, when he passed, I reached out to Lonnie and I said, Lonnie, why don't you join our advisory board for the university and let us start a scholarship fund. And you don't even have to give us any money. I'm going to raise the money from the immigrant Muslim community to support the Black Muslim community, the leaders of those communities. Just gift us the name and we'll carry on his legacy of service to humanity and support people who are in service to humanity. And so 4 years ago, she did just that. And we've raised now over $2.5 million and awarded over $2.5 million in scholarship funds to dozens and dozens and dozens of Black men and women who work full-time in underserved communities around the nation. So that's very rewarding, and it's an honor to be attempting at least to carry on the legacy of the champ. I'll stop here. I know we have a little bit more time, but I thought there might be some questions and answers. Usually I get questions about violence in Islam and women in Islam, but I'm anticipating that they'll come, and you're welcome to ask. I don't have thin skin. My name is Jihad, so I'm a little bit of a walking teaching moment. But I have to say this. Before any of that. Sometimes people say when I travel abroad, and I've traveled for the U.S. State Department abroad to places like Indonesia, Morocco, Qatar, France, because France has a large Muslim minority population, 10% of the community. And, looking at track 2 diplomacy in those areas. And sometimes people say, oh, your name is Jihad and you're an imam in the American Muslim community. You must have a really hard time with the name Jihad. And, I say, I don't. I mean, growing up, I played soccer, AYSO. And when I was like, 7 or 8, my teammates started calling me Jay because it's shorter, especially when you want the ball. Jay, pass the ball. So when the roster came out, it wrote J-A-Y. They wrote J-A-Y Turk on the directory, and my father looked disappointed, and so he crossed out the name J, and he wrote J-I-H-A-D. Made dittos for those of you who know what dittos are. Some of you I see probably do here, and he went to the game. And he started passing me out on the sideline. And I was so embarrassed. I was like, Dad, what are you doing? He said, no, I gave you the name Jihad because it has a good meaning. It means the struggle to do the right thing. And it might be unusual for people it might be unusual to people or difficult for them to remember or to say, but it's worth the extra effort. So I've always gone by Jihad since then. And I've been called different things, Jack, Gerard, Jihad, all kinds of different names. I never really had an issue with it growing up because it wasn't in the popular imagination. But after 9/11, and I was doing my doctoral program at UCLA at the time, Jihad became associated with this idea of holy war. And so people would oftentimes come to me and they would inquire. But it was always in a respectful way. Like I never had difficulty. People didn't discriminate against me. I didn't find, wasn't treated harshly. And I always tell people, I said, I feel reaffirmed or reassured in my Americanness that my fellow citizens, although they might have a negative impression, are not so deeply antagonistic where they just jump to conclusions, but they feel comfortable enough in actually coming and inquiring. And it's a curiosity. It's a genuine curiosity. I think that even led to this invitation today. And so I tell people I'm reaffirmed and reassured in that identity whenever I encounter my fellow citizens who have that kind of American spirit of openness and welcoming attitude. My father, when he came, and I'll stop here, He immigrated as a 17-year-old to the city of Merced, California, finished high school there before coming out to study at Arizona State Teachers College, by the way, is what it used to be called. When he arrived, he had the local, I think he was part of the Rotary Club as well. Could be mistaken. I'm not sure which of the clubs, but he was also a city councilman, a businessman, and he was a printer. He had a printing press, and he brought my dad on, sponsored him, came by himself at the age of 17. And the local paper wrote an article entitled, "Arab Boy Arrives in Merced to Begin Life He Dreamed of." And I recently sold my dad's house in Tempe and moved him out to New Jersey, and was going through his scrapbook, and I found the original clipping in a scrapbook of his. So, I think it's a testament to the American dream, and it's a story that needs to be told more, especially with today's rhetoric. Sometimes people don't quite understand the generosity of spirit that exists. I think permeates most hearts and minds here. So I'll stop there and take some questions.
A couple of questions, and I believe Brooks will manage those.
The first question comes from Angela, and she's asking, have you noticed a difference in the way people interact with Muslim Americans over the last several years, and what has that been? Yeah,
there was a study done. A friend of mine used to work for Gallup, the polling company, and she had done a survey of the Muslim world, because after 9/11, I think it was Dick Cheney who asked, what do the Muslim world think about 9/11? And the head of Gallup was at this kind of closed door meeting, and he says, we don't know. We haven't done a survey. But he said, we can undertake one. So they did a survey that statistically represented, what 1.6 billion Muslims around the planet think, and around issues of terrorism and democracy and freedom and all of those things. And the person who headed up both the study and the analysis of it was a woman named Dalia Mogahed, and also John Esposito over at Georgetown. So the two of them wrote a book called "Who Speaks for Islam? What 1 billion Muslims really think." And what is surprising is that Muslims are as opposed to terrorism and violence, and as supportive of democracy as your average American. In fact, they were more opposed to terrorism percentage-wise than Americans were. It was a very small percentage that were supporting terrorism on either side, but when you're talking about 1 billion people, that's still a few 100,000. I'm very intimately familiar with some of these numbers and the recruitment tactics, because I was invited to the White House for a summit, to participate in a summit on countering violent extremism a few years ago. And so what I've noticed, though, nonetheless, is that there is a correlation, and what the research says is that there's a correlation in anti-Muslim rhetoric, not in correlation to either 9/11, although there was a spike in 9/11, but not so much during other kinds of terrorist events perpetrated by Muslim terrorists around the world, but usually in conjunction with election cycles. And whenever there's an election and the politician chooses to select a wedge issue that focuses on the fear that understandably people would have towards Muslim terrorists or Islamic terrorists, they the politician might sort of highlight that message and do a little bit of fear mongering, and then people would respond by committing acts of vandalism of mosques, of violent acts against Muslims, bullying in schools, because it trickles down to kids. And there was at one point over 50% of Muslim kids around the country were getting bullied, physically harmed, and called names by students, by the teachers even. So it did get ugly, but usually around election cycles, and it would wane when the election cycle was not happening. And so that being said, the animosity towards Islam and Muslims is based on media. It's not based on a personal negative interaction with the American Muslim community, because the American Muslim community, the 2/3 that are immigrants, they came as professionals for the most part. I mean, you've probably seen a lot of Uber drivers there in Phoenix, but for the most part, I mean, Muslims make up 1% of the US population, but 10% of the American physicians in the country. Similarly in engineering as well. There was a brain drain when the immigration policies became more lax in the 1960s. There was a meritocracy that attracted the best and brightest of the rest of the world, including the 1/4 of the world that's Muslim. And we got an influx of doctors and engineers primarily because in their educational systems abroad, they emphasize medicine and engineering as the two areas of focus. And so they sent their best and brightest here to the States, who oftentimes ended up settling and establishing families here, sometimes intermarrying or sometimes getting married abroad and bringing their wife to the States and having children here. So that being said, the familiarity that people have with Islam and Muslims is limited to mostly media. And when they do encounter a Muslim, unless they look particularly Muslim-y, like I don't have a big beard and, I don't wear a turban, that's why I was called John and Jack and Jihad and other things. I don't have an accent, but, and I'm olive-y, but not, I can pass. Sometimes I experience white privilege, I guess you could say. But, some people are more Muslim-y looking, women who wear the head covering, et cetera. They might face more of a challenge, but sometimes I remember there was a YouTube video of two Middle Eastern men on the side of a freeway in Florida that were filming something. And a lady pulled over in a pickup truck and she got out and it was the most filthy tirade against these two Middle Easterners who, just very, very foul. And she was invoking her Christianity while just unloading on these two in the most vulgar way. And they're just kind of like looking at each other and laughing because, they were dark skinned. They had the little, goatee beard and all of that. And someone's laughing. I don't know if Frank remembers that video, but, they were two Brazilians that were just filming some like sketch on the side of the road. But she kept going off on them, calling them Muslim terrorists. And, what does a Muslim look like? I mean, yeah, if you have the beard and the turban but most Muslims don't look Muslim-y according to the stereotype. And so most Muslims don't actually face that much hardship unless you're kind of very obviously Muslim. So that's part of it. And then, sometimes people go out of their way to be gracious when they notice that you're Muslim-y. And so, it's a mixed bag. It's a long answer to a short question, but it is a very important question. That's why I spent a little bit of time on that.
Jihad, if you could be a little more succinct, because there are a lot of questions.
I'm a clergy person. You can't give a clergy person a microphone and tell them to be succinct, but I'll try my best. Brooks.
Dick Dunseith asked, how would you deal with Wahhabi and the madrasas that teach ill will towards non-Muslims? What's the approach of the majority of Muslims and to dealing with that issue?
There's a verse in the scripture in the Quran that says that evil and good are not the same. Push back with evil with what is better until the one who is like your worst enemy becomes like your best friend. Sounds like the teachings of Jesus, right? Turn the other cheek, etc. There's another verse that says that there's an analogy with regards to truth that uses, you have dry riverbeds there in Phoenix, the Salt Lake River there. Sometimes when it floods, there's some frothiness on the top. That frothiness looks big, but it dissipates. But what remains, what's useful, the water will eventually give life to earth. And the verse of the Quran says, as for the froth, it dissipates, but that which is of benefit to people remains. Here in the United States, we have this First Amendment clause that talks about freedom of speech. And when you say you have people who are espousing white supremacy or Nazis or whatever, the Supreme Court says, well, the antidote for bad speech is good speech. So what we do as an institution and as a community writ large is we are vocal and give pushback against those who would invoke religion to justify things that are unjustifiable, whether it's terrorism or sectarian violence, Wahhabism, all of that. So our approach is to be of use, that will remain, and to give pushback to bad speech with good speech, and hopefully win over those who are like our worst enemies and make them like our best friends, as that verse from the scripture suggests. So you don't hear about it in the media because what bleeds leads, and having a kumbaya message does not get headlines, and people say, well, I never heard any. Well, it's there. You can Google it. It's there on Google, but it just doesn't make the headlines in it's not going to come to you if you're passive, a pacifist a passive consumer of news. Whatever your mainstream news outlet, it's not sexy. But if you want to actually understand and see what Muslims are saying to themselves about all of these issues, it's all there on, I think Georgetown has a Bridges program where they've kind of captured all of the Muslim sentiment and pushback to extremism.
I have a question, Jihad. Could you tell us a little bit more about your youth here in Phoenix, and with a Christian mother and a Muslim father, how did you make the determination, or did your parents make it, that you'd be raised Muslim rather than Christian?
Yeah, my mother was not, I would say, a very practicing Christian. I mean, we would celebrate Easter and get Christmas presents, which, that's always a bonus. My grandmother, Mary, she was evangelical. She was out in Washington State, and we'd visit with my cousins from my mom's side. My dad had one brother who lives in Phoenix. He just passed away earlier this year. I went out there for his funeral. But, we didn't have a lot. He only has one son, him and his wife. So we didn't have a lot of cousins on the Muslim side. And my dad, he was 17 when he came. He finished high school in the US and went to college here. So he didn't know that much about Islam, to be honest. He was practicing himself in the sense that he prayed regularly. But Islam is like Christianity, to be honest. I mean, people have this imagination of what Islam, they think Islam is somehow Eastern and Christianity is Western. They're the same biblical figures. They all came from Abraham. I mean, it's not like Abraham's older son Ishmael went to the East. He went to Mecca, but that's just directly south of Jerusalem. It's not any farther east than Jerusalem is. Muhammad is a descendant of Abraham through Ishmael, and taught the same thing as Abraham: believe in one God, be good, prepare for the day of judgment and heaven and hell, and same values. It's monotheistic. I would say Islam is closer to Christianity than as close as Christianity and Judaism are to each other. Islam is kind of the meat of that sandwich, right in the middle. It's closer to Judaism in the focus on monotheism, and it's closer to Christianity than Judaism, with the acknowledgement that Jesus is Christ, born of the Virgin Mary, inspired by the Holy Spirit, and with a focus on heaven and hell and the day of judgment, which is not usually emphasized in most denominations of Judaism. And so, Muslims are not Christians also in that we're almost Christians, but we also recognize that Muhammad was a prophetic figure, and he was born some, 700 years after Jesus. So, for me growing up, my parents weren't super religious or knowledgeable about religion. And the one thing my dad did for me growing up is, he used to take us to Sunday school with a bunch of other Muslim families, but he started sending us to this youth camp in California with other families. It was actually started by a Methodist woman, but it was a Muslim youth camp. And it piqued my interest to learn a little bit more about Islam because I really enjoyed those youth camps. And so when I grew up and, my friends were turning to drugs and alcohol and, other things that seemed to be fulfilling, but were really just kind of not really satisfying the soul, if you will. I was fortunate to not really go down that road. And so, but I found that some of the people who I had met at these camps were, had that inner peace. They had that sort of tranquility that I thought, well, maybe there's some there. Let me look into that. So it was really something I did starting my senior year of high school and continued on that journey. I'm still on that journey today, some 30 some years later.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the interfaith work you've done? And I know we're running out of time, so just briefly.
Sure. I co-founded the Greater Los Angeles Muslim Jewish Alliance, which is a coalition of major Jewish denominations as well as Muslim communities here in Southern California. And we create a safe space for the leadership to get to know one another and to work collaboratively on the common good. I also co-founded the Muslim Christian, what was it called? The consultative group. And had representatives from all the judicatories of all the mainline Christian denominations, as well as the Catholic Church, and also Muslim organizations here in Southern California. And we created a study guide that pairs up Christian churches and mosques so that the lay people can get to know one another, not just the clergy and the pastors and the imams. I co-chaired for the U.S. Indonesia Society, the Council on Religion and Pluralism in Democracies here in the United States and in Indonesia. And I I was on a founding board of Regeneration, which is a Muslim Jewish educational institution that promotes Waldorf education in conflict areas, primarily in Israel and Palestine, but also here in South Central Los Angeles and other places. My wife's a Waldorf teacher. My kids go to a Waldorf school. I think there's a Waldorf school there in Phoenix. There's a few dozen other things, but those are kind of the main ones. And
we're running low on time, so I just want to thank you. Yeah, we could talk for a long time, but we are.
One more important one is we started an interfaith food pantry that feeds like tens of thousands of people a year, called HopeNet, and we opened a food pantry here and at this Jewish synagogue and at the dozens of churches. So yeah, there's a lot we can do if we take faith seriously and the shared values that we have to make this world a better place. Thank you so much for inviting me and for giving me such a long period of time. I think I went way over, but thank you for your graciousness. And I look forward to continuing the conversation.
We loved the message, so we appreciate you taking the time today to share it with us. It was an inspiring presentation on peace, which I think so many of us want to encapsulate in our lives. One thing with Rotary, service above self is our motto. And I think that goes hand in hand with your message. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. I'd also like to have a quick shout out, first of all, for Mr. Chuck Emerson, who is on with us today. Hello, Chuck. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. We miss you and hope you are doing well. Congratulations, Rachel, on your Paul Harris. Great job. Welcome, Serena. We look forward to your involvement with Phoenix Rotary 100. I know you will be a wonderful, wonderful addition. Please mark it on your calendar for Friday, May 21st at the Embassy Suites at Central and Thomas. Our presentation will be Allison Delishment. Sorry, I hope I pronounced that properly. With Moat Marine Laboratories. Her presentation will be on saving the world's reefs from imminent extinction, which we certainly do not want to see happen, right? Happy Rotary Friday, everyone. This concludes our general membership meeting of the 107th year of Phoenix Rotary 100 and the 5,323rd overall meeting. Please be safe. If you're so inclined, get a vaccine and don't forget to wash your hands. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.